Okay, let's get started. Hello, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is the Quarter 1 webinar for the Affordable Solar and Storage Pre-Development and Technical Assistance Solicitation, or Pre-Development Program for short. My name is Dylan Cunningham, and I'm an Assistant Project Manager on the New York Sun team at NY-Sun. And before we get started, just like to go over some webinar housekeeping. So all participants will remain muted during today's webinar. If you at any point have a question or comment, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom right-hand side of WebEx, and we will answer questions at the end of the webinar. We are also recording today's presentation and webinar, and we'll post that as well as these slides to the pre-development program webpage for your reference afterwards. We will also send a follow-up email with that information in a couple of days when everything is posted. And then I highly encourage everyone to take a look at the presentation slides after they're posted, because the last 8 slides or so have information about other NYSERDA programs that we're not going to really spend much time on today. But those are other programs that offer resources for multifamily buildings. And lastly, to provide some background on this webinar series, we started this with the goal of creating an open and ongoing platform to share information and answer questions about the pre-development program. So with that said, today's webinar will cover program overview, followed by program updates, and then just a little shout out to the Community Power Accelerator for everyone's awareness, and then we'll get into supported activities, how to apply, and end with Q&A. So now I'll hand it over to Chris Rogers for the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. So we'll kick things off as we always do with an overview of the pre-development program. Thanks, Dylan. So if you're unaware, or for everyone's awareness, so I guess we're level setting, the New York Sun program is the solar program or initiative at NYSERDA. It administers all the incentives which are available for all new grid connected solar projects. It's everything that we do as part of the New York Sun program is working towards the overall goal of 10 gigawatts of installed distributed solar by 2030. The pre-development program, though, is part of a specific set of initiatives which are in alignment with the community or the Climate Act, which is focused on at least 40% of benefits to disadvantaged communities. We refer to that as the Solar Energy Equity Framework, and the pre-development program is just one part of the programs and initiatives that work towards that. Next slide. The pre-development program overall will run, since we're working towards the 10 gigawatts of distributed solar by 2030, the pre-development program is essentially intended to operate and will exist until, or as long as the New York Sun incentives exist. And since we have the 2030 deadline for that, that's why the deadline technically for this program is 2029, with the goal of having these projects completed by 2030. The program itself provides grants up to $200,000 for early stage development of community-based and community-led projects that are benefiting affordable housing and low to moderate income households, I should say, solar and or storage projects that are benefiting affordable housing, whether that be a portfolio of single family housing or regulated multifamily affordable housing. The grant applicants, and they typically do, they include affordable housing providers and managers or community-based organizations. They can also include technical service providers that are working in partnership with the typical housing authorities or community-based organizations that are heavily focused on low to moderate income households, disadvantaged communities. I should also note, I always want to make this clear, this program is available for projects that are located in Long Island, as well as in projects that are servicing municipal electricity service territory. So it's the entire state of New York. It's not restricted in any way. It's more focused on the community-led project of the community-led solar and or storage project. Next slide. So the project applications themselves, and we're still working towards this, they are reviewed on a calendar quarterly basis. The webinars that we do are, the key part of that is letting people know or notify of an upcoming deadline. And the next upcoming deadline is in fact the end of this month, not the end of December. So March 31st, 2023 will be the next deadline. Hopefully, if you have any applications, we'll see another pool of applications that'll come in through then. The intent is to have the entire review of those applications done within a 4 to 6 week period. For those who may be joining the webinar who have an application that has been submitted, I can assure you that we are still working towards reviewing those. We have an internal and external review committee process that we've been sort of revamping and sort of rebuilding over the last year, which has led to some delays. The next slide shows what the timeline is for these calendar quarterly deadlines. You know, the broader overall program, as I mentioned, it is intended to run through the end of the existence of the New York Sun incentives, which is through 2030. But again, we really like to signpost these calendar quarterly submission deadlines so that we can communicate to those who are reviewing the applications. And then just so that everyone is aware that these incentives, they remain available. We are still trying to encourage the development of these community-led solar and storage projects. The next slide, it are some key terms that I will often, or people at NY-Sun will often speak about when talking about the pre-development program. Regulated affordable housing is a key one because most of the projects, most of the approved grants under this program have involved regulated affordable housing in some fashion. For the New York Sun program and for this specific grant program, regulated affordable housing essentially means a multifamily building, or it can be a portfolio of single family buildings that are operating under some kind of regulatory agreement with an oversight authority. That authority has determined what the income-based restrictions or criteria are for residents in those buildings. There's a timeline. There are details on what those limits and restrictions are. That is how we are defining regulated affordable housing, which is a slightly higher threshold than perhaps naturally occurring affordable housing, or maybe it would turn out that the average income in a particular property is at a level that is maybe 80% or below the median income. That would not qualify. There needs to be this sort of regulatory agreement in place, maybe with New York State Homes and Community Renewal, maybe with the Federal Housing and Urban Development, or with any sort of housing authority that we see across the state administered by municipalities and or tribal authorities. Next slide. The other key term are technical service providers. These are the type of organizations that will often work in partnership with either community-based organizations or the owners and managers of the affordable housing themselves. It can come in a lot of shapes and form. The point that I want to stress here is that the intent of this grant program is really to benefit the owners and managers, primarily of regulated affordable housing. And so grant applications where it is unclear what the relationship is between a more technical service provider, or where it appears to the reviewers that the technical service provider is really is leading the application in a way where they've sort of identified and maybe they're bringing along a manager of affordable housing. Or I guess you can think of it as a more bottom-up approach where either the community-based organization or the owner manager of affordable housing, they should always be really front and center of any grant application. And applications that are led by the technical service providers, those typically do not review as strongly because it's not as clear that the primary intended beneficiaries are actually receiving the funding under this grant. And so that whole in partnership, that's where it would be incumbent upon any applicant to really explain what that relationship is between the technical service provider and the intended beneficiaries. Multifamily, single family homes, we've expanded it because the different types of affordable housing that occur in New York State. In more urban areas, you generally have more multifamily housing, but there are some portfolios of organizations that are operating single family buildings, that is 1 to 4 family homes, in a way that is very, very similar to multifamily housing. If that is the property that you are looking at, this program can potentially support that. It'd just be important to explain again how it is that we're talking about low to moderate income households or disadvantaged communities. And community-led projects, that is a key point where the funds for this grant program, they really are, it's intended to benefit communities coming together and trying to identify ways to develop these solar and or storage projects. And now we'll get into program updates, of which there's really two that we're going to focus on today. One, there was recent guidance updates for the Inflation Reduction Act from the Treasury Department, as well as some changes for the non-residential solar incentives. That is what covers multifamily buildings within the Con Edison region. And so we'll talk about that to make sure that folks are aware. First, in the Inflation Reduction Act, which came out last August, there was a discussion of basically increased investment tax credits for certain types of properties. There is almost a one-to-one, if not 100% overlap between the type of projects that would be supported under the pre-development program and projects that would receive increased investment tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act. Based off of the updated guidance that came out a few weeks ago, it would appear that there are not going to be restrictions that would it would appear that it is more likely that any project that is applying for pre-development funding would likely be in line for increased added incentives. And so we wanted to make sure that those who are interested in pre-development funding are aware of the potential increased tax credits. That is, the investment tax credit, it starts at 30%, but for projects that are either classified as low-income community projects, low-income residential building projects, those are affordable housing projects located on Indian land, that is projects that are located within tribal authorities, which we have here in New York State, as well as qualified low-income economic benefit projects. Those are projects where, regardless of where they're sited, the manager, or I guess the owner of the project, can establish that at least 50% of the benefits are going to, I believe the threshold are communities that are, or I guess where the households are under 200% of the median income, which again, if your project is targeting disadvantaged communities, that would appear to apply. If you're a project that is applying for funding under the pre-development program, by definition, the primary benefits for your project should be going towards projects that would qualify for one, if not all of these separate categories. Those can increase the investment tax credit from 30% to either 40 or 50% of the project. And so we just really wanted to encourage folks, if they were not aware, to incorporate this within your planning for your projects. These incentives are really benefited, or they're intended to benefit projects that would also be or eligible for pre-development program grants. And so, there's no restriction on the grant funding you would receive from the pre-development program. So you really ought to explore that. There have been statements that there should be additional guidance on exactly explaining what regulated affordable housing, what would be a low-income residential building project. But it would appear that's, I guess, it would be incumbent upon you to prepare for the likelihood that you would be able to take advantage of this funding, which they've now laid out will be in place for at least the next couple of years. The next slide, which I wanted to talk about, is the changes in the Con Edison incentives that would benefit multifamily affordable housing, or multifamily housing in general. There have been new blocks that have been added towards the smallest type of projects under 200 kilowatts. Currently, that incentive is at $1.20 a watt. That incentive has, there are now two more blocks that will be at $1.80 a watt. And so there's a little bit less than 7 megawatts of capacity remaining. If you're looking at a project based in the Con Edison service territory, we're essentially providing more insight into what the incentives will be going forward. The larger capacity blocks for the 200 to 1 megawatt and the over 1 megawatt, those still have a significant amount of capacity, so they're not going to be running out soon, but we just wanted to let folks know that in case you were not aware, that additional capacity essentially has been added to the under 200 kilowatt tranche or megawatt, or that capacity block, the small non-residential block, which is going to likely cover all multifamily affordable housing. I think the average size of those projects is around 30 kilowatts. So this is directly applicable to folks in New York City or Con Edison region, Westchester County, who are looking at these projects. The next thing that I just wanted to highlight on is the incentive for multifamily affordable housing. Just two things just to go through really quickly. This incentive it's slightly higher in the Con Edison service territory, either $1.60 or $2 a watt. That is locked. That is as the overall incentive blocks decline, the incentive that these projects would receive automatically adjusts, so that you know that if it's a community solar project that is not awarded the community credit, you know that it will be $2 a watt. If it is remote crediting or an on-site net meter project, that project will receive $1.60 a watt in Con Edison. Also in the Long Island region, this has been in place for I think a little over a year now, but it is $1 a watt within the Long Island service territory. So this is one of two solar incentives that exist in Long Island service territory. One covering single family homes where the household income is at or below 80%, but then also regulated multifamily affordable housing is eligible for $1 a watt. That is also the incentive in the upstate region. You really want to stress that because we still receive questions about whether or not there are incentives on Long Island. So in addition to the pre-development program more broadly, those projects themselves, they are also eligible for additional incentives. The next, or I guess the last thing I'm going to talk about in this sort of update section is the Community Power Accelerator. For those who are unaware, the Community Power Accelerator is a U.S. Department of Energy program that is very similar to the pre-development program, and that is intended to fund technical assistance for projects, for community solar projects that are essentially focused on communities and low-income communities. This is it. I guess that the timing isn't perfect on this, in that the deadline for applications is March 15th, so a little less than 2 weeks. But we wanted to let folks know that there is this funding that is available from the Department of Energy, and they are hosting a webinar. We're going to post I think Dylan is going to drop that link that is in the Q&A section of this webinar. But also, we will be uploading a recording and the slides from this presentation later. And so you'll be able to, I guess, access that link. But for those who are joining now, we would encourage you to join the webinar, which will be tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, where they will be talking about the Community Power Accelerator. If you are preparing a grant application for this program, I would encourage you to consider, if possible, tailoring that to also submit perhaps that might work an application for the Community Power Accelerator as well. With that out of the way, we'll switch to want to talk about supported activities under this program. So I've sort of touched on this already, but the overall, the pre-development program is intended to support early stage development of either solar or storage projects. And that typically falls in either the categories of exploring project financing, finding the right teams to partner with and procuring services, either in identifying solar or storage contractors. It can include some preliminary site assessment work to determine if where you're intending to build your solar or storage project is viable, if the roof is in good condition, if you have sufficient space and clearance to build the solar project, or if you have safeguards in place for a storage project, if the municipality you're operating in requires that. or it can be developing what the overall economic model will be for your project. If you're trying to develop something new, perhaps a more community owned and driven project model. Those are some of the most common types of grant applications that are focusing on the teaming part. Dylan, if you could go to the next slide. Other types of projects have focused on building up a sort of aggregated procurement model where you're finding a pool of different sites that are interested in building or developing a solar and storage project so that you can get better pricing from contractors on basically offering them more capacity or more opportunities to build out or install hardware. You find more capacity, and then you do a larger solicitation or some sort of competitive solicitation that wouldn't really be possible if you're just focusing on one building at a time. And then there's a range of activities that are looking at the overall project financing in terms of finding appropriate lenders, of finding the appropriate rates, and trying to find a way to get your project off the ground. Next, I want to jump into how to apply to the program. Everything is completed online. There is a portal where you would upload documentation, including the project detail, which is the core application, as well as a draft version of what your intended work plan will be. There are a few other documents that you must do in order to identify who will be the lead entity on this application itself. There are two sort of web pages or websites for the pre-development program. There's a main one where we house the webinars we upload the recordings as well as the slides. From that, it contains a summary of the program, as well as there's this page where all of the program opportunity notices, or the ponds, affordable. So this program, pre-development program, is PON 3414, and that contains all of the attachments, including, and significantly, there is a document that lays out the entirety of all of the rules and requirements and criteria for the pre-development program. That is found on the program opportunity notice page. And so I would encourage you, if you are considering an application, to review that for different rules and requirements for that program. So with that, we're going to pause for a second and go through the chat to get prepared for the Q&A section of this webinar. I can see that some folks have already added some questions to the chat. I would encourage you, if you have any questions, to add those now, and we will address as many as we can. So the question is, are the pre-development, well, and just to clarify, and I think I mentioned, we will be uploading both the recording and the presentation slides after the webinar. And so if you would like to share that with any of your colleagues or anyone you think is interested, we will make that available. But the first question is, are the pre-development grants or incentives available for nonprofit educational institutions, for example, those in Long Island? So the critical part there would be what the tie is to the community-led solar and storage project and or low to moderate income communities or affordable housing. An educational institution, it's not immediately apparent what that direct tie is to low to moderate income households or regulated affordable housing. And so if a project application included an educational institution as part of an overall community effort that was focused on either affordable housing, disadvantaged communities, or low to moderate income households within that community, that would be a key part of or I guess that the review committee would assess as part of the application. And so I guess that will be true for any grant project. I think the most quintessential grant recipients that this project works, or this grant program works for, are housing authorities, municipalities that essentially manage affordable housing, I guess entities that are managing regulated affordable housing themselves, or community organizations that work primarily with low to moderate income households. If you do not fall within one of those categories, then your overall project team should make it clear where one of those groups are included within your team and the overall leadership planning. The next question is update on the Inclusive Community Solar Adder. Will the qualification for a low to moderate income look the same as the pre-development program? I guess what I can say is that I think the final guidance for I guess now that we've received the updated guidance from the Treasury Department on the Inflation Reduction Act, that I think the second round, or we're preparing for that now, and Dylan, feel free to correct me on the timing of that, but essentially the updated guidance for the ICSA will be coming out, I think, relatively soon. I think as far as the qualification for low to moderate income look the same, I think well, I mean, it's different. It's a little bit more complicated. Well, it includes a broader range, I think, than maybe the pre-development program, in that it depends on, there's different tiers of benefits that depend on, what percentage of a community solar project are going to disadvantaged communities. The pre-development program is intended to be really focused on affordable housing that can be either single family, that can be multifamily. There's not really any room in a pre-development program for a community solar project that was maybe managed by a I don't know, a for-profit entity that was allocating some capacity to affordable housing. That would likely not get approved. And so there needs to be, for the pre-development program, I think it's almost entirely affordable housing. What I can say is that what is considered multifamily affordable housing under the ICSA and under the pre-development program, it's the same definition for the New York Sun Solar program overall, and that they're looking at projects with regulatory agreements with oversight authorities. I feel like that answer kind of jumped all around, so maybe I can say it again really, really brief. Qualification for a low to moderate income household, if it's multifamily affordable housing, there's sort of one definition for the solar program overall. That's going to apply for the pre-development program, and it's going to apply for the ICSA. But I think the ICSA is a little bit more expansive in the type of projects that are eligible for incentives than the pre-development program. But the updated guidance for that's supposed to be coming out relatively soon.
Chris, excuse me, I'll just add that we will soon be announcing a webinar related to the Inclusive Community Solar Adder and the next round of that. So I would just encourage everyone to be on the lookout for that if the ICSA is something that you're interested in.
Thanks, Dylan. Next question and this would apply for anyone who's had an application submitted. I would expect for you to hear back within the coming weeks. We've been going through all existing applications, and I guess the short version is that we're restructuring our overall review committee process, and that caused significant delays last year, but we've fortunately been able to resolve that. And so because we've been able to resolve that, we've been able to finally get through past applications and provide updated guidance to those who have submitted them. I'd be happy to talk with you online specifically about what your grant application was. I guess, feel free to reach out to me after the webinar, but essentially, we're trying to wrap all of those up by the end of this month.
I see there's a question about signing up for emails, and I'm going to answer that so everyone can see the link to that.
Thanks, Dylan. And I forget, Dylan, did you give a specific timeline on the Did you just provide a timeline for the ICSA update? I don't know that off the top of my head.
No specific timeline for the ICSA, just I think we'll announce more specifics in terms of timing on the webinar, which will occur on March 14th. But we haven't sent emails for that webinar yet. That'll go out shortly.
There is no limit on the number of grants that can be awarded in a specific round. If a single entity is applying for multiple different grants, there is an assessment to see if what is being proposed is substantially different from what has previously occurred. And so, I guess a key nature of, the intent of the grants, they're supposed to help community-led projects acquire the technical assistance that they need. If an entity has received a grant to do a certain type of technical assistance and sort of is applying to do the same thing again, that is taken into account if there is substantial difference in the application. But otherwise, the overall, the only limit is the amount of funding that is left. And as of right now, based on the rate of the applications that have come in, there isn't a risk in the program running out of funding. If it did, I guess if the program were close to running out of funding, we would likely explore making or adding additional funds, and so I don't anticipate that would be a real issue. And thanks, Dylan. For those who didn't see it, he just put the link to the webinar tomorrow on the Community Power Accelerator, which is the DOE Technical Assistance Program. Again, the deadline for that application is March 15th, which is a couple of Wednesdays from now. I'll just pause there to see if there are additional questions. Dylan, you're not seeing any, you don't have anyone that were directed to you specifically, right?
No.
Yes, with the grant, the question is, with solar plus storage an eligible project? Yes, and that is specifically intended to be a solar plus storage. The only thing, this is sort of a practical consideration for solar plus storage, is that there aren't a lot of examples of those projects actually taking or actually being successfully completed. And that's for a variety of technical challenges and a lot of issues. And so it's important for a grant application that is talking about storage to really express how I guess how the additional challenges for that storage component or that specific solar plus storage have been considered. I don't think there's an expectation for solving all of the issues that may be in place from a particular fire department. But I guess it's important for an application to be sort of realistic about the likely barriers for a project that is including storage on affordable housing. But yes, those type of projects are very much encouraged. for new projects that are coming in, the expected turnaround from the end of the quarter period towards announcement would be 4 to 6 weeks. The question is about the cost of interconnection and the I think the initial interconnection screening application, that is an allowable cost, but a full CSER, no, is not considered eligible. So I think the initial submission application, that can go in, but it's not intended to cover the full cost of interconnection. I will note that in the Con Edison region specifically, though, Con Ed is rolling out, I think, what they call their Make Ready program, which is intended to provide interconnection support for certain projects, but that's just Con Ed specific. And I think that's still, they were doing comments on that last fall, and that hasn't launched yet. So I don't have further details to share or a link to go out there, but you know, that's gone. I think that's gone to DPS for final approvals. So I'm not seeing any new questions come in, so we'll give it another minute or so before wrapping up. So Dylan, I think we can take this one out. The I guess the last few things to say is that we will continue to do just a quick reminder that we'll continue to do the future webinars on the pre-development program so that again, we can, you know, as much as I would encourage folks to send me emails with questions about potential applications and we can talk those through. This is also to provide more impromptu dialogue so that folks can answer the questions and can collectively share this information, as well as uploading these in the future on our website and sharing the slides so that this information is out there. Next slide. This was, I think Dylan alluded to this, but we would encourage you to sign up for the emails from New York Sun. These go out. They're always titled solar announcements. You can choose the details related to the, I think, the non-residential program, as well as different low to moderate income incentives. Next slide. This allows you essentially, this is how the primary mechanism where we announce updates to the megawatt block, to new incentives that we're doing to every program change, and that includes the pre-development program, the announcements of upcoming webinars. And so if you have not already signed up for those emails, I would encourage you to do so. With that being said, again, we will work to get the recording of this webinar as well as the slides uploaded as soon as possible. If you missed the link to the Community Power Accelerator program, or someone that would be interested in it, that's tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. You can email me or call me, and I can send you the details to that Zoom link so that you're able to attend, as well as feel free to follow up with additional questions that you have or feedback about the pre-development program. And with that being said, thank you all for joining and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.